Hi, it's Thursday, July 9th, and I want to remind you that this Sunday we're having an outdoor service at 10 a.m. It will be brief, and bring your chairs and masks, and if you would like to bring your own beverage, you can. And just FYI, Anna and I went out this morning at 10 a.m. and it was the whole area was in the shade. So, and it's supposed to cool off by Sunday. So, isn't that great? So, I hope to see you there. If you would prefer not to do that, we are going to do a video of the service, and you can watch it whenever you want on YouTube. So, we've been talking about social justice. We had another very interesting conversation last night in the book study. And we are going to, next week is our last one, and you can come without having read the book. Next week is more general. It's not going to follow the book so much, but just general ideas of what we as a congregation can do to make a difference in racial reconciliation, in contributing to social justice. And so, as I said yesterday, it's really interesting. When I research this and read about it, one thing leads to another, and we could do a whole class or study on it, which we could, we can keep that in mind for when we once again can meet safely. But just a couple of things. This social justice is certainly not new, and reform. Our tradition is in the Reformed tradition, and reform is the core of social justice. Most of us, talking about reform, most of us spend a lot of time and energy fixing problems and attempting to make our lives better in some way, right? I think almost everyone does. But many of us also seek to broaden this motivation and seek reform to include communities and regions and even whole societies. And what is the best way to go about it? Is it to change behavior? Is it to change an individual's mind or habits? Or is it to regulate the behavior through laws that punish or encourage certain behaviors? So historically, people were always working to make life better. And there's a book called The Journal with Other Writings of John Woolman. In the 1800s, he was a Quaker, and he worked tirelessly to free slaves and to talk about abolition to slave owners. And the push to abolish slavery didn't really take hold for about another 100 years, but there's also something called the Second Great Awakening. They had frontier tent revivals, and it was led often by Charles Finney. And out of the Second Great Awakening, there came hundreds of reformed societies, and many of them were dominated by women. And the women saw that their Christian faith was the impetus. It was the springboard for reforming American society. And their thinking was they wanted to make society perfect and ready for Christ's second coming. We don't talk about that very often, but it is something we are waiting for. And so there was abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, so they could vote, missionary societies, Bible tract, little pamphlet societies, prison reform, and temperance were some of the most popular reform societies in America's earlier times. And then one more bit that I thought, well, there's a lot, but another person I thought was interesting wrote a book called On Lynchings, Ida B. Wells Barnett. Well, and this was 1884. She sued railroad companies for segregated seating and petitioned the people and government to end lynching, to end the lynching African Americans. 1884, she did this. So she was way ahead of Rosa Parks in fighting segregated seating. Many Christians also tried to reform child labor laws, safe working conditions as an outgrowth of their faith tradition. And then they had to focus on getting governmental laws and regulations to uphold their reforms. You have to get the government to go along with you or it doesn't work. So there is so much to this, and I hope we can explore it further. But do join us next Wednesday at 7 and bring your ideas, ways that we can make a difference as a church. And blessings.